Jay here for Full Time Devils. This is your MUFC daily update. And the big news last night, of course, was Mauricio Pochettino sacked by Spurs. It was around 7:30 last night that the news broke. Spurs releasing a statement, Sky Sports had it, and then Spurs released a statement saying that they'd parted company with their manager. Now, that caused a bit of a frenzy, as you can imagine, amongst a lot of United fans, because Pochettino has been linked with United for a few years now, so him being out of a job makes people think, well, is he going to end up at United? Now, obviously, he wasn't sacked to go to United. He was sacked because Spurs have been struggling this season. He's not been happy. He's been making a lot of noises about how he's not the manager, he's just the head coach. It sounded very much like Jose Mourinho at United towards the end of his time at United, the noises that Mauricio Pochettino was making. He obviously didn't feel he'd been backed properly in the transfer market. I know that Spurs bought Ndombele, but it wasn't a sort of a massive transfer market for them after they got to the Champions League final. And the season before that, they didn't buy anyone. I think they had a zero spend, and they actually let the likes of Moussa Dembele go in January as well. So despite not really spending, he still managed to get Spurs to the Champions League final and finish in the top four. So he did a good job there, Pochettino, and I think he was expecting to be backed in the transfer window in the summer. He wasn't. There's obviously been a bit of friction with him and Levy. Spurs haven't been doing great this season. I think they're down in 14th, so it's not been a fantastic season for him. And obviously Levy's decided to pull the plug. Now, he may well end up at United, Pochettino. We'll get to that properly later, but that's not the reason he's left Spurs. He's left Spurs because him and Levy, or Levy's decided, Daniel Levy, the chief exec, has decided that he doesn't rate him anymore, he can't work with him anymore, and there's a big reason why he got rid of him, and that's because Jose Mourinho was taking over. This morning at around 6:30, the news broke that Jose was taking over at Tottenham. So that was a bit of a shock to some people, but if you look at it last night, just before I went to bed, I checked, and the odds on Jose becoming Spurs manager had dropped significantly. They were 3-1 on, I think. So there's no massive surprises there. There may be a few people raising an eyebrow thinking, Jose to Spurs, does that really fit? A few years ago, I think he said he'd never go there, or he made noises that he wouldn't go to Spurs. The thing is with Spurs, they have got a good squad. They have got a good team. Yes, they need strengthening, but Jose, he's based in London. We know that was a bit of a sticking point when he came to United because he didn't move to Manchester. He was staying in the Lowry, he was staying in a hotel. So he might well look at it and think he can keep his family in London, he can settle there. And obviously, Spurs are in the Champions League, the second in their group in the Champions League. And despite the fact they're in 14th, I think they're in 14th on 14 points. Now, you look at it, United are 7th on 16 points. So there's not a massive gap there between where United are and where Spurs are. And if Jose can get Spurs playing well, then definitely I think they can get into the top four this season. It's a big if, but he's a manager that, at least initially, always has success at the clubs he goes to. Even at United, he had success in his first season and relative success in his second season. We finished second, which he said was his greatest ever achievement in football, or one of his greatest ever achievements in football. Now, the big question with this is, obviously, does this pile more pressure on Ole Gunnar Solskjær, the fact that Pochettino is now out of a job? Because it was a few years ago when Louis van Gaal was under pressure, and just before Jose was appointed, where there was rumours that it was actually Pochettino that was going to take over from Van Gaal. Now, some of the stories doing the rounds were that there was a camp, or there was a section of the United hierarchy that wanted Pochettino. The likes of Sir Alex Ferguson, the likes of Sir Bobby Charlton, they favoured someone like Pochettino. They wanted him to take over from Van Gaal. Where it was apparently, again, this is what we're hearing, stories that were doing the rounds at the time, Ed Woodward favoured Mourinho. Now, Ed Woodward ultimately makes the decision, so he got his way, and Mourinho took over. So Pochettino has been linked with the United job before. And what you look at is now, if you go back to that sort of Louis van Gaal time at United, when he was under pressure, when he wasn't doing very well, and as soon as Jose got sacked, that pressure was amplified. People were looking at it going, well, Jose's available, he's a manager that's been linked with the club before, maybe he can take over. Now, Louis van Gaal finished the season by winning the FA Cup, but it was already decided before he won that he was on his way out. It was obviously, he left, I think 2 days or a day after he won the FA Cup, and Jose took over about a day later. So it was already a done deal. So this is the sort of question that's going to be asked now of Ole Gunnar Solskjær. Is he under more pressure? Are the United board going to look at Pochettino and go, right, he's available. Ole's been struggling for the past sort of 6 months, really, back end of last season, beginning of this season. Is it time to go for Pochettino? Now, that could well happen, but the other sort of twist in this story is that Bayern Munich have also been linked with Pochettino. Now, Bayern Munich, of course, do have a caretaker manager, Hans-Dieter Flick, who was the assistant at Germany, and then he was director of football for the German national side. He's now caretaker manager at Bayern Munich. He got the caretaker job. And he had initially had a good start. I think they won the first 2 games. But it's been a bit patchy at Bayern Munich recently. I think they've won 2 of the last 5 league games. I think the 3rd in the Bundesliga, which for a club like Bayern Munich, I know they were sort of struggling to start with, isn't great. And there's question marks already about Hans-Dieter Flick, whether he's going to stay there for even past January or whether he's just going to see it out to the end of the season. What's going to happen there, no one's quite sure of. But Pochettino to Bayern Munich could be a good fit. He's a popular manager, Pochettino. He's highly regarded by a lot of people in football, a lot of the media, a lot of owners and fellow coaches. He's very popular. So Pochettino to Bayern Munich might make a lot of sense. Now, the one question mark over Pochettino, of course, is he hasn't won a trophy. But you're almost guaranteed to win a trophy if you go to Bayern Munich. I don't think they'd be looking at Bayern Munich and think, well, he can't win anything here. It's not a one-horse race in the Bundesliga, but it's not far off it. So I think if he was to go there, that could be a good fit. Now, this, again, might add a little bit more pressure on Ole Gunnar Solskjær, because if the United board are looking at Pochettino and they think that he could end up at Bayern Munich, that might make them act quickly. They might think, oh, if we don't act now, we're going to lose him. There's a similar scenario when Jose was at Chelsea. He got sacked at Chelsea, and then it was around Christmas time when he got sacked, and then there was a feeling that if United didn't act quickly in the summer, he may well end up going back to Spain or going somewhere else. So you don't know whether the board might look at it that way. They might look at it and think, we need to get Pochettino in quickly, because if we don't, we'll lose him. Now, I've said all along that I'll back Ole, and I think that if you look at the signings he's made this season, the likes of, especially when you look at Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Daniel James, young players, he's got rid of a few players, he's bringing in the youth. We've seen the likes of Brandon Williams, Mason Greenwood, Angel Gomez coming through. I know there's question marks over whether Gomez is going to stay, but Ole seems to have this sort of long-term strategy. Now, if we get rid of him now, that's obviously going out the window. You're bringing in a new manager, and we're starting all over again. Now, we've been doing this for the last 3 or 4 years. We did it with Moyes, brought him in, got rid of him after 9 months. Giggs took over till the end of the season. And then obviously Louis van Gaal came in. He made some signings, had a couple of years. Then he went. Jose came in. He made signings, had 2 and a bit years. Then he went. Ole came in, and now it's looking like, well, not looking like, there's a chance that Ole may get till the end of the season, or, till the wheels come off. And then we could bring in a new manager, and you wonder about when it's going to end, this sort of merry-go-round of bringing in new managers, then making signings, then someone else taking over when it all goes Pete's on. So I'm not sure whether this is a good idea to United to be looking at Pochettino. I'm not even sure if they are. Woodward obviously said that he's backing Ole, but I don't know how much sort of weight you put behind those words, because Woodward said he's backing all the managers and he never does. I think the problem with Manchester United goes deeper than the manager. I've said that all along. I think it's the hierarchy, and I think the fact that you've got someone like Ed Woodward, who is having a say in transfers, or has had a say in transfers, is always going to cause problems. And I think you need a structure at United, like you've got at teams like Manchester City, like teams like Liverpool, it pains me to say, where you have a sort of director of football, someone who works with the manager, they work together, they identify the targets, and they make it happen, rather than this structure we've got at United, where you've got a coach or a manager, and then you've got the likes of Ed Woodward, who's a banker, making decisions about whether players are going to leave or players are going to be signed, or whether, we're going to sanction certain deals. It just doesn't make sense to me. Now, I like Pochettino, I think he's a good manager, but again, this merry-go-round, you've got to sort of draw a line. When are you going to stick with a manager and back him? We were going to back Ole, that was the big sort of thing, right, we'll give it him permanently, we'll back him this time, we'll give him a long-term plan. And now already it's looking like, well, our way, is Pochettino going to come in? One other twist to all this as well is Jose's going to be in the dugout at Old Trafford on the 4th of December, I think it is, because obviously he's taking over at Spurs. Spurs are playing United then. Will he get a good reception? Some people are questioning that. Listen, he got a good reception when he came with Sky. Do you remember the pictures of him in the Sky commentary box, waving to the crowd? It was like Caligula, everyone waving to him, chanting his name. I know it's different when you come in as a manager against the club rather than a commentator, but most people sort of, not everyone, but a lot of people still have a little bit of regard for Jose Mourinho at Old Trafford. His first season did bring us some trophies. I'm not counting the Charity Shield, but we won Europa League, which is obviously great to win a European trophy. Completed the set. That night in Stockholm was amazing for many reasons. The League Cup, finished second. Okay, it was a distant second to Manchester City. It was 19 points behind him, but it's still the highest we've finished since Sir Alex retired, and it was still a step in the right direction. The problem was the following summer, we didn't back him, and we all know what happened there. He wasn't happy, he was fuming, he was making the same sort of noises that we heard from Pochettino about, I'm not the manager, I'm just the head coach. You have to ask the board about transfers, I've made up targets, they've not been met, and all the rest of it. So it's very similar there into what happened with Pochettino and Spurs and what happened with Jose at United towards the end of his time at the club. It'll be interesting how this develops. I think now, no matter what, it's hard to deny that Ollie is going to be under a little bit more pressure, because if we go on a bad run, if we don't pick up points, especially away from home where our away form has been pretty shocking, then people are going to be looking at Pochettino and going, there's a manager who's available, who can take over right away. And you know this board, they are trigger happy. They do knee-jerk reactions, so there's no point in saying, oh, well, the board wouldn't do that, because they would. That's what they do. People thought they'd give Van Gaal time, they didn't. People thought they'd give Moyes time, they didn't. People thought they'd give Jose time. They gave him a new contract in the January, and then they sacked him in the December. So this board is sort of rife with, what you say, short-termism. So it wouldn't surprise me if Ollie is under pressure that Pochettino was getting a phone call. I'm just going to dive into the comments to see what you guys think. Guys, let us know. Would you have Pochettino? Do you think we need to back Ollie? Do you think there's even a chance of Pochettino coming? Or do you believe it when Ed Woodward says that he's going to back Ole Gunnar Solskjær? Someone saying here, Abraham saying, if Ollie's not a legend, I don't think he would have survived this. Or a manager is not a legend with these results, will be back like this. It's not about how he did it as a player. That's a criticism that is always levelled at Ole Gunnar Solskjær. The fact that if it wasn't for his record as a player, he wouldn't have got near the Manchester United job. Now, that's fair enough. I don't think anyone's denying that. If he wasn't who he was, if he hadn't scored all those goals for United and had the career at United, would he have come to Old Trafford after his last job in the Premier League, saw him getting relegated with Cardiff? No, obviously not. But it wasn't just that got him the job. It was the fact that when he took over as caretaker, we had that amazing run. We had a record-breaking run, and people obviously believed in what he could do. That's what got him the job permanently. The timing of giving him the job was always a bit iffy to me. I didn't understand why we waited until he started losing games before we appointed him permanently, but we did. So don't think it's just the fact that he's a player. I think he sort of proved himself in that initial period, and then the board, as the board often did, made a knee-jerk reaction. Someone else saying Ollie is director of football, bringing Poch as manager. That's something else that's been suggested. Would Ole Gunnar Solskjær be happy to move to director of football? Would Pochettino be happy to come in and have a director of football in Ole Gunnar Solskjær? I think he would, to be honest with you. I think if he's been working with Levy, Daniel Levy, who's notorious for sort of getting involved and sort of not always backing managers in the transfer market, and I think if he gave him the sort of the move where he's gone from Daniel Levy to Ole Gunnar Solskjær, he'd probably be happy with it. And especially if it sort of keeps the fans on board for Pochettino, the fans that are still pro Ole because he's not been sacked, then maybe that could happen. I don't know. It's something that wouldn't surprise me. Someone else is saying we won't sack Ole. Jose is a good coach. I believe he will do good at Spurs. Jose usually does quite well initially at a job. The first two seasons, I think United was the first club where he didn't win the league in his second season. So he's always won trophies. He's usually won titles at clubs. I don't think he's going to win the title at Spurs. But if he won a trophy at Spurs, that'd be a success, because when's the last time Spurs won a trophy? Is it 2008 or something, the League Cup? I can't remember, but they've not won many. So I think even if he won, I know they're not going to win the League Cup because Colchester knocked them out, who we're playing. But if he did pick up some silverware, whatever it was, during his time at Spurs, then he'd probably consider that to be a success. Stop saying director of football. He's not ruthless in the market. This is Ollie, I think he's talking about. He failed to bring in a midfielder and failed to replace Lukaku, and claimed there's no player in the market with good value. I think that this is the thing as well. When he was sort of making these decisions or making these statements, was he the one who was behind it all, or was it Ed Woodward? If Ollie's director of football, is he going to be given the power that he needs to be a director of football? And is Pochettino going to be happy to work with it? There's a lot of ifs and buts in this, of course. We don't know. But it seems to make a lot more sense than having Ollie as manager and Ed Woodward over him. Personally, I keep saying this, I'll say it again, I would give Ollie to the end of the season. I wouldn't be making knee-jerk reactions now. Let him have a full season. Let him have 2 transfer windows to see what he can do. He's made a lot of transfers out, well, not a lot, but a few out in the summer. He's brought in some players in the summer. Let him do what he needs to do in January, and then we see where we are at the end of the season. If Ole was to get top 4 or we were to win the Europa and get Champions League, would you want him sacked then? Would you want him moved on? Probably not. Someone else is saying, Ankit saying, Pochettino was not given enough money to sign players. At least Ole was given. Ole was given money, but our net spend wasn't that great. Our net spend was about 40 million quid. Don't forget, we got 72 million quid for Romelu Lukaku. So, and we also got Alexis Sanchez or sort of off our wages as well, because I think we did a deal where we paid some of his wages. Chris Smalling went out as well. Ander Herrera went out. So a lot of players went out. So it wasn't just a case of we fully backed Ole. He brought some money in as well by getting rid of a few players, which was one of the gripes I had. I didn't think our net spend was enough. I thought we should have been spending more if we had realistic aspirations of making the top 4. I'm going to wrap it up shortly, guys. I'm just going to do a few more comments. We need to back Ole, says Hobart Blobber. I don't care if we finish 10th for 3 seasons. I'm sick of only giving managers half a chance. I don't know if everyone will go along with finishing 10th for 3 seasons, to be honest with you, mate. I get where you're coming from. But I think Ole is under pressure, and I think he does need to have some success this season. Even if Pochettino wasn't available, I still think Ole's got to show we're moving forward, we're improving. So he does need to improve on our league position at the minute. I think 7th isn't good enough. And he needs to improve probably on last season's finish of 6th. I'm just going to have a look finally. If you give Ole 2 transfers this season, all he's going to do is get all English players for me. That is dead. Sorry, English players are overrated. Yeah, we bought 2 English players in Maguire and Aaron Wan-Bissaka. We also brought in Daniel James, who I know he's Welsh, but he's played in the English league. I don't know if we are just going for English players. We've been linked with Mario Mandzukic. He's obviously not English. So I don't know if it is just English players we're going for. I think that's just the 2 best defenders we could get were English, and I think it made a lot of sense to buy both of them. Just finally, someone else is saying, next 5 fixtures will tell if it's top 6 or mid-table for United. Some tricky games coming up for Ole. Yeah, it could be a sort of a telling time for him, and we'll see whether he survives that or not survives it, whether he shows what he's made of, and whether whether United are linked with Pochettino anymore, whether it becomes more likely that he's going to join us, because at the minute, you know, there's a lot of rumours doing the rounds. He's probably hurting the fact he's just been sacked from Spurs. He's probably going to want to sort of take some time with himself and his family to decide what his next move is. I don't know if he's going to want to come straight back into management, straight back into Manchester United. We'll have to wait and see. Guys, I'm going to leave it there. You all know the big news. It's Poch has been sacked. Jose's been been given a Spurs job. Now Poch is linked with United, so we'll wait and see what happens there. Get involved in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll be having a podcast later on where we'll have Adam McCullough, Andy Tate, myself. We'll all be chatting about Jose, about Pochettino, about all the latest Manchester United news as well. So don't forget to tune into that later. Thanks for watching.